Hello everyone and welcome to Zach's Garage. Today we are so fortunate enough to be able to review one of the cars that I have so much adored for such a long time, or since the car was ever released. And as you can probably tell by the title, we have the MCLAREN P1. So without further ado, here it is.
It can drive me to your heart.
I know, that door was quite special. Something I've never seen before. But anyway, that's not what we're going to focus on. Today we're going to focus on the MCLAREN P1, one of my all-time favourite cars. The styling, the performance, and, well, you've all seen the reviews. It's a real driver intuitive car. But one of the things I love the most about it is the looks of it. Now, MCLAREN have obviously focused heavily on styling and aerodynamics. The car is fantastic to drive, people rate these so highly, but if you didn't want to drive it and you wanted to just stick it in a collection to look at, I think we can all agree it is something very, very special. So this car is actually a one-off P1 because it was a set of a few cars that were in the exact same spec. It was this and an MSO HS, a 688. Now, the colour is called Blue Alpha. It's the only MCLAREN P1 in the world with this colour, and the same with the 688. It's got carbon fibre everywhere, and the interior has got a really interesting contrast between leather, Alcantara and carbon fibre. So let's have a little look around it, and I can walk you through the small details on this particular MCLAREN that stand out from the others. Okay, so the MCLAREN P1 debuted in 2013 at the Geneva Motor Show. Now at that time, all the customers had been selected by MCLAREN and the cars had all been sold. So deliveries commenced that year. There were a total of 375 of them made, and deliveries and production ended in 2015. As you can tell, it's a very limited number car. This one, being finished in a very unique specification, being a one-of-one car, also made it stand out from the crowd. So as mentioned before, the paint on this car is very unique. Called Blue Alpha, it's the only P1 to be finished in this colour. There are so many small details on this car that make it stand out. Now the reason why I'm standing here is one of the main features on this car, in my opinion, is this white line down here. Now this is painted, it's not a sticker. It's something that is very cleverly done because you see the white line, but it doesn't look incredibly sharp on the paint. Now the reason for that is along the white line there's also a lighter blue line which helps it contrast into the dark blue alpha. And if we move a little bit further back, you will see down here on the side skirt, P1 MSO. So this car was taken straight from the MSO factory, or the MCLAREN factory where the MCLAREN special operations are, and delivered straight from there, because there is nothing on this car apart from a few options which is standard. So the rear half of this car has certain aspects to it defined by MSO. So you can see just above the MCLAREN badge, it's finished in satin carbon. The engine bay also finished in satin carbon, and small sections of the car just to show a few lines and a few small details, so when you're up close with the car you can really see it. But something that you can't see, but is nice to know that it is there, is the 24 karat gold exhaust heat shields. Now these were originally featured on the MCLAREN F1, and to the person who originally spec'd this, congratulations, because that is something that you can't necessarily see very easily, but to know it's there is something truly unique. So one of the options, or MSO options, that the original customer would have designed is the carbon fibre rear wing. You can have the whole rear wing in carbon fibre. It has been seen on MCLAREN P1s, but what I don't believe has been seen is the lower half, or the bottom side of the rear wing is in carbon fibre, and the top is in Blue Alpha, so the paint colour. Now what this means is that when it's sitting in race mode you can see it very prominently, and it's a great design feature. But when it's switched off and it's on normal road mode, you can't see it. So that just shows that when the customer designed or spec'd the car, he wanted it to be able to be pretty in every form that the car could have come in, meaning race mode or any other mode. There's also a small badge here saying Bruce McLaren and a Kiwi. Now that's quite interesting because it's only an MSO option. It's made out of enamel and has only been featured on very, very few McLaren P1s. But it's something that when you're driving behind the car or just looking around it, it's something that stands out quite a lot with the white and the green contrasting. So it's just the small details that make a difference. So while we're back here, let's talk about performance figures. The car's doing 0 to 60 in 2.8 seconds. Now that's hair-raisingly fast, but what always makes me laugh is the fact that the car is electronically limited to 217 miles an hour. The fact that it's electronically limited means it's capable of going more, but they thought, you know what, 217 is enough, no one needs to go quicker than that. That is incredible. I mean, seeing what one of these would be like unrestricted or unlimited would be mesmerising, and who knows what it'd be capable of. But how does it do it? When the P1 was first released in 2013, the car was the first ever hybrid hypercar. Now what that means is that it uses a combustion engine and a battery to get to its end gain of 903 brake horsepower. So it separates the combustion engine having 727 brake horsepower and the electric motor producing 176 brake horsepower. Now, the reason for the electric motor is what McLaren call torque fill. So when the turbos are empty, the battery kicks in to keep the car accelerating or keeping it at that speed so you don't have any turbo lag. Now that's a very clever design, but it also means the car is able to run solely on battery. Now admittedly, it's not for a long duration of time, but with a few simple presses of a button, you can run this on just battery. So when you're sitting in this P1, the first thing you can feel is the tightness of the interior. Now what I mean by that is with the door closed, you really feel like you're in a cockpit of a fighter jet. Whether it be the racing bucket seats, which are incredibly supportive and really don't let you budge, whether it be the carbon fibre all over you, including up here, all along the A-pillars and the whole dashboard, or the slight leather and Alcantara feel to the car, which provides a little bit of luxury in your McLaren P1. When you're sitting inside the McLaren, what can you expect? Well, you can expect a whole heap of power under your right foot. You can expect lovely interior qualities, such as leather, Alcantara and carbon fibre. But you can also expect a vast amount of technology. Well, you've got 3 LCD screens here, the centre one being the main one, which displays the RPM, the speed and the gear. But you also have the smaller system down here, which displays phone, media, radio, navigation and lots of other amenities. But one of my personal favourites being weather, where you can just go into apps, tap weather, and there you have your local weather to where your McLaren P1 is at the time. Okay, so here we have Iris. Iris is McLaren's infotainment screen, which features phone, media, radio, navigation, apps and voice control. The one thing I do want to focus on though at the moment is the track section. So down here, as you can see, you have these switches. So here you have N, S and T, normal, sports and track. Now when the car is on, you can choose between any of these. So if you want, for instance, the handling in sports, but the performance in normal, you can have that. Or if you want the handling in track, so it gives you a very responsive steering, and the power in track, which will give you a very responsive throttle. Or you can press this button down here called race. First of all, we're going to have to start the car by pressing our foot on the brake, pressing the start engine button. So I warn you, it's going to be quite noisy. Then you have to press active to make all of these panels active, and then you press race mode. Now, it's not as simple as that. You have to have the handbrake on, you have to have the doors shut, but when I press race, you will see a warning symbol come up on the screen, which gives you a lot of blurb about how dangerous it is and how much of a confident driver you have to be. But if I press and hold race, it will then put me into race mode. On the LCD screen in the middle, it will show you what's happening. So in the front here, you can see it's lowering. In the back, you can see the spoiler going up. And in the bottom, you can see the time remaining until your P1 is in race mode. So whilst you're doing this, you can sit here and prepare yourself for what's about to occur. And there we have it. Your McLaren is now in race mode. Okay, so on the steering wheel you have 2 buttons, DRS and IPAS. IPAS stands for Instant Power Assist System. So what that does is when you're accelerating, you can press and hold that and it will use the electric motor to give you a boost of power. So if you find that your P1 isn't accelerating enough, you can just hold this button and give it even more crazy acceleration. Now, DRS stands for Drag Reduction System. So what that does is when you press that and hold it, it will lower the wing, which creates less drag and for higher top speed if you're in a straight line trying to accelerate. Now, both of these have been taken directly from the Formula One from McLaren. Okay, so the P1 obviously being powered by a 3.8 litre twin turbocharged V8, you've got a very loud turbo whistle when driving along. Now, unfortunately, I can't demonstrate that as we're not able to drive this car today. But what I can do is start it up so you can hear the real mechanical noise of this car. Now, one thing I would say to listen out for is when this car starts, it doesn't have a cranking process, it's just instant, because it uses the battery to help it start. So to demonstrate, I need to put my foot on the brake and press the engine start-stop button to go. But I'm going to send you guys further back so you can hear really how loud this car is. This car has a small amount of storage in the front, which I'll show you now. Now, the way to access that is you press the lower button on the key, and there is a small button inside the right nostril, as McLaren call it, to open it. So if I press just here and lift, you can see the luggage space. So I've shown you some of the technical aspects and some of the performance figures, but I think it's about time we hit to some B-roll so you can see the sheer beauty and aggressiveness of this car. So without further ado, the McLaren P1. As always, I hope you've enjoyed the video. I hope you've learned a little bit about one of my personal favourite cars, the McLaren P1. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next video. See you later.
You can drive